Community Church in Franklin, Tennessee, and I'm here to speak up against censorship and the silencing of librarians and the voices of diverse authors, teachers, and students. All students across Tennessee, no matter the color of their skin, their economic background, where they live in the state, or how their parents vote, deserve a high quality education and access to books with diverse perspectives, authors, and characters. Yet late Monday night, Speaker Cameron Sexton snuck in an amendment on an already harmful bill that would require school libraries to only cover books on the State Textbook Commission's approval list. I'm not just disappointed, but horrified at these giant steps of censorship and book banning. Can Speaker Sexton or anyone else tell me one time in history where book banning and censorship was a good idea and had positive effects on society? Instead, history teaches us these types of policies discriminate and harm large groups of people. Our legislators should be focused on fully funding public schools and making sure all students have access to a quality education. But instead, they are focused on culture wars and book bans, wasting our tax dollars and trying to hide the truth of history from our children. There is more than a subtle hint of racism behind this measure. It is no accident Speaker Sexton's ban on books follows other legislation against critical race theory and a late night vote to disband the state's Human Rights Commission. This is all part of a larger fear campaign against CRT and our LGBTQ community. It's almost as if this particular session has been a bad episode of Handmaid's Tale. President John F. Kennedy said, "If this nation is to be wise as well as strong, if we are to achieve our destiny, then we need more new ideas for more wise men reading more good books in more public libraries." And then he said, "These libraries should be open to all except the censors." Legislation that attempts to censor our trusted librarians and teachers is shameless and a blatant attempt to grab more power and silence diverse perspectives. Our students deserve to read books that reflect their true selves. Giving power to a politically appointed board to have control over professionally trained librarians is not only a burden to our libraries and public schools, but is a dangerous silencing of perspectives and voices. As Christians, we should never fear the truth. Not only did Jesus tell us the truth would set us free, but he also commanded his disciples to not live in fear. Creating legislation out of fear exposes our students to the truth about history is the opposite of what we should do as Christians. We are called to be people of truth and justice. So it is my fervent prayer that our elected leaders pivot from this harmful censorship legislation. And now I'd like to introduce a student at Franklin High School, Lindsay Hornick.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Hornick and I'm thrilled to be here today. I go to Williamson County School, Franklin High School. I recently spoke at the Williamson County School Board meeting regarding censorship and its drawbacks. I'm one of the very few Jewish students at Franklin High School, and the topic of censorship is brought up often in my social circle and my family circle, especially with the recent banning of Art Spiegelman's graphic novel, Mouse. I understand why parents are concerned with the content their children are learning. However, I come from a very open-minded home. My parents allow me to choose what I read and watch, and personally, I think choosing my own literature has made me a more well-rounded individual. I would hate to see my education system be limited by a board that has almost no diversity. There is nearly no topic that can be discussed in schools anymore without controversy. In fact, a book about seahorses was found inappropriate because it teaches how the male seahorse carries the developing eggs instead of the female. Parents thought this was inappropriate because it showed the male being, quote, pregnant. There should be nothing controversial about the Earth's natural life. This children's book is about how seahorses work and why they are unique. It is not a political controversy regarding their gender fluidity, but parents have turned it into just that. During the House Education Instruction Committee hearing on March 2nd, Representative Vincent Dixie questioned the makeup of the current board, which I have researched myself and found that there is almost no diversity in race, political parties, or religion. How is a one-sided board supposed to make decisions about the most important aspect of our education? Books. Books allow us to learn about the world through a variety of lenses and create our own opinions on topics. They teach us about the past in ways that exploit the truth. No matter how difficult it may be to hear, the documented past allows us to learn and to grow. It allows us to prevent tragedies from repeating. There's always a way to talk about difficult subjects in a manner that correlates to the development of children. However, speaking as a high school student myself, we should not be so limited in our exploration of knowledge. We're preparing to enter either higher level education or the real world. How are we supposed to grow as individuals if we have no knowledge of the harsh realities of our environment? The truth is, history is messy, and books tend to expose that. Without true accounts in books such as Things Fall Apart, Huck Finn, Night, and the already banned Mouse, how are we supposed to learn? How are we supposed to grow if we do not know the truth of the past? How are we supposed to become sensitive, well-rounded individuals if history is guarded? This new bill makes me question, how far does inappropriate go? How far will parents, faculty, and the school board go with censorship if this bill is passed? Soon enough, we won't be able to read anything except Goodnight Moon. Books that expose the greatest tragedies of our history will be banned, and with them, the truth. Imagine living through something as horrible as, say, the Holocaust, and then hearing nothing but silence. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Andrew.
Thank you. This is a really important event. Elizabeth, thank you for asking me to say a few words. I didn't come with prepared remarks, but my name is Andrew Marinus. I live in Brentwood. I'm an author. I'm a father. I write books about history, sports, and social justice for teenagers, dealing with issues related to race and homophobia, sexism, anti-Semitism. And over the last 10 years or so, I've had a chance to visit schools in 25 states around the country, and I've noticed that the very best place in any of those schools that I visit is the school library. You know, it's where kids have a chance to really be themselves, to discover new worlds, discover new books, see themselves reflected in books, learn about other types of people. And so I feel that any attack on books and schools and librarians is really an attack on all of us, on all people, and an attack on democracy. And like you said, everything is connected. This legislature attacking voting rights, attacking the ability to protest, attacking free speech, attacking LGBTQ people, attacking Black people. It's all related to attacks on democracy, and attacks on books are right at the heart of that. And so it's really disgusting. It's outrageous that we have to be here standing up for the right for people to read books. You know, but that's where we are. And so if we're in that culture war, give me the side with the librarians and the teachers and the schools and the parents and the students. So thank you.
My name is Emily Jenkins. I'm a mother of 5 in Williamson County, and I'm also a product of Metro Nashville Public Schools K through 12. I also serve as an advocate in the juvenile court system for kids that have been abused and neglected. As part of that work, I've had an opportunity to advocate for students across the state of Tennessee. And the one thing that is consistent is that nothing is consistent. Every student comes from a different perspective. Every student has their own background, their own needs, their own identity, that they need to feel that they belong in the community in which they are living. So I want to ask, when we look at the textbook commission, when we look at the textbook commission, how do we expect this commission of 12 to represent the needs of every student in the state of Tennessee? Right now, there are 10 members of the commission. They're asking to add 2. They're asking to ask 2 librarians to join and to be the voice for all students and their needs in our libraries. Now they're asking professional libraries to join a commission that is effectively disbanding all respect for librarians across the state. What librarian is going to say, I believe that no librarian in any school in this state is capable of selecting books for our students, but I'll be on the commission and do it? When you look at the lunacy of the process, it comes down to a pretty simple fact. It's the election season. This is pandering to the base. This is pandering to this idea that you are either for public schools or for protecting children, but that somehow the two don't overlap. This is not realizing that when students come to school, every student has a right to be heard, to feel that they belong. I think back to my experience here at Cameron Middle School in the heart of the Napier homes, where it was a mix of students who were bussed in from the suburbs and students who walked on foot from the projects. And our librarian, she knew that every fall there was going to be a group of sixth graders coming in who wanted to learn about Laotians and wanted to learn about refugee experiences, which might seem weird given the population of the school, but she knew that we had the most incredible sixth grade math teacher who was himself a Laotian refugee and who every year would tell his students about his experience of fleeing, and that story would spark students to want to know more. That's the kind of individual on the ground at the school level knowledge that our librarians have when they're selecting books for the students that they serve. When you look at what they're asking this commission to do, we've got a commission of 12. They're going to be seated in July. They are expected by January to come up with a list of every approved textbook, fiction, nonfiction, in every school in the state of Tennessee. That works out to roughly 4,500 hours if they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the time they're seated until the time that they create this list. That's less than 3 minutes per school to develop a list of every book that's allowed in the library. If they spend 15 minutes on each book, we're looking at 8,000 books that our students will have access to statewide. This is lunacy. We are not in a book pandemic. There is no emergency that people are going to die if they don't get books off the shelves by January. But the same legislature that wants to preach about the need for small local government is making this a statewide initiative, pushed through at the last minute with no time, no preparation, no opportunity to be heard by stakeholders, and no possibility that this can be effectively done in the timeline on which they have done it. You know, we think back to those little sayings that get passed around in every time we have one of these political moves. But, you know, first they came for the librarians. We're to a point where we're watching the funeral march of the death of expertise, when a singing cowboy has the voice to stand on the floor of the legislature and explain what literature is appropriate for our children, and librarians are being cast aside and disrespected as having no input as to what's appropriate to be in our libraries. This is ridiculous. This is culture wars gone awry. This is all an election move. It's poorly thought out, and it will end badly for our state and our kids. Next up, we'll have Rod.
Good morning, and thank you to Williamson Strong and the Southern Christian Coalition for the chance to speak today. I'm Anna Cottle, a special education advocate and former high school teacher, mother of 2 sons who have attended private school, public school, and homeschool, wife of a high school teacher. I'm here today in defense of our public school libraries. For years, school librarians have worked with parents, supporting us in what books and materials our children could make use of in the school library. Unfortunately, it seems Speaker Sexton and his supermajority want to take away parental control, restricting us from collaborating with librarians for the benefit of our own children. This is not a new phase for this legislative session. At every turn, they've threatened to withhold funding from our public schools. They've insisted that teachers are the enemy, school nurses are the enemy, and now school librarians. These are the professionals, these librarians, these nurses, these teachers, who spend more waking hours with our children than we do, and they deserve our respect and support. When I was a teacher at a private Christian school here in Nashville, the headmaster started every year lamenting the Americans' loss of respect for people in authority ever since Vietnam. Well, I'm here to tell you that the disrespect is coming from inside the supermajority legislature, and I've had enough. Our children are not using public school libraries to access porn. They're not thumbing through the pages to find deviant sexual behaviors or subvert American history. If they want to get any of that, it's all on their cell phones, and our public school libraries don't have the funding to offer anything that could compete with it. They're going to the library to learn. I was an advanced reader growing up, and my mother said there was only one time she objected to a book that I got from my public school library. Mama said as far as she was concerned, the job of censoring a child's library books is a parent's job, and anything else is big government sticking its nose where it doesn't belong. She didn't call the legislature. She called Miss Parks and Miss Burns my school librarians. Mama was right. This legislature has heard the testimony of teachers, librarians, public school parents, and students, and still its heart is moved to punish the public schools our taxes fund. 1,700 public schools and 147 school districts. This legislature provides a total of $4,000 less per student per year than the national average, and yet they still would have you believe that they're not the problem, but instead the librarians are to blame. In the church that I grew up in, there was a name for the Israelites, for the man who told the Israelites to make bricks without straw. Speaker Sexton and the members who passed this bill through committee are pharaohs in miniature, treating Tennessee librarians shamefully. No wonder Commissioner Penny Schwinn told Governor Lee, we've been 2,000 teachers short per year for the last several years. No matter what made-up controversy they seize on next to scare hardworking Tennesseans into thinking our kids are in danger, it's not going to answer for the failure of moral responsibility this legislature has shown our children. If you look at Memphis, the state-run achievement district is closing after only 4.5% of students scored at grade level. If you look at Waverly, hundreds of Humphreys County kids sit in a makeshift warehouse classroom as I speak because their elementary and middle school classrooms are still destroyed from last year's flood. What has this supermajority done but turn their backs on the children and pad the rainy day fund instead of giving them functional schoolrooms? If you look at Sunbright, where the state's first community school was started, the opioid crisis has left 80% of students not living with their parents, and 1 of every 4 parents is dead. What has this supermajority done for those children? And still, Speaker Sexton would have you believe our school librarians are the predators and not this supermajority's complete failure to care for the children of the volunteer state. Will the 10 to 12 members of that politically appointed textbook commission review the millions of books in Tennessee schools? Will they comb through the online library applications for school use? Will they have the training to discern why an online library such as Bookshare is invaluable for disabled students to learn? Or why Dolly Parton's Imagination Library partners with Bledsoe County Schools and Sweetwater City Schools and Lewis County Schools to give children more books than their parents could afford? The Supreme Court in Epperson versus Arkansas found that it is a violation of the Establishment Clause to tailor a public school's books to satisfy any religion. That was in 1968. Is this supermajority really going to claim the rule of law at the same time that they use our taxes to bring a manufactured crisis back into the courts, wasting resources earned by our hands that should benefit our children? Or do they expect us to fund their endless culture wars and then donate sacrificially to fix the problems that were their responsibility to begin with? I am a Christian, and because of that, I look to the teachers and the librarians and the nurses as the helpers, the people I know who live in my neighborhood and see my children every day. I talk with them when I have concerns about what my child is teaching, reading, or being exposed to. I certainly don't ask a little pharaoh with no background in education or library science to tell me what my child ought to get to read. And to close, I'm going to remind the supermajority that if they could be troubled to read the book that they call the official state book, they might see this question: and what does the Lord require of me? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with my God. These words from Micah precede the Christian tradition, but perhaps if the supermajority and Speaker Sexton could muster some respect for even one verse, They would be freed of the fear that drives them to control education decisions that we should be free to make for our own children. And they could instead lead with laws that would contribute to the flourishing of Tennessee's young folks. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to start by acknowledging the countless librarians across our state that wanted to be here today, but because of state testing, their attendance is required in the schools dotting this state. My name is Dr. Rod Berger, parent and citizen of potentially the great state of Tennessee. The time has come to call out the voices in the far corners of our state, the voices that weaponize words and what-ifs to drive down and away common sense. HB 2666 Amendment 2 would have you believe that this is a matter of decency, of a moral code of parental practice and oversight necessary to ensure the protection of the youth of our state, to invoke unrealistic fears requiring immediate intervention whereby public institutions of education are deemed the appropriate battleground. Shame on the citizens of Tennessee from both sides of the aisle. We have been duped by an extremist sect posturing as conservatives unlike any we've experienced for decades. You see, this isn't a battle of red versus blue, of Democrat versus Republican. This is the result of an apathetic electorate unsure of the floor beneath their feet. And we are the living, breathing chum in the water for political predators masquerading as local and state officials, and dare I say authorities of perceived best practice, directing educational practices and procedures for the youth of our state. The media would have us believe that the liberals and conservatives are at battle. The conservatives not divisiveness. What we are battling for the nation to see in plain sight is extremists in their attempt to erode public institutions for the installation of short-sighted, exclusive, and divisive guardrails meant to celebrate the increasing diversity of our state, not meant to celebrate the increasing diversity of our state, but rather to separate us by our differences in a ruthless attempt to maintain social structures and positions whereby the roles remain the same: the old South versus the new South, white privilege versus the impending reality that the majority status is running out of sand and a new representative voice is afoot. That voice needs to embrace the realities of today. That our silence puts us at risk of losing countless teachers, administrators, and librarians across the state of Tennessee because of reckless culture-altering fissures rooted in classic gaslighting activities and tactics. DE&I has been hijacked by the persistent drumbeat of CRT fears. Equity and access has been hijacked by small-minded pundits fearful that sexuality and taxes are being commingled at the expense of what they deem as holy and right. Locally, we have seen battles play out that have sadly set the stage for today. Earlier this year in my county, Williamson County, we dealt with these fabricators of self-serving truth when they submitted over 30 books for removal. They won. They got their one. That was followed by another 4 sent to the state chain for expulsion, all the while local citizens holding on to a false sense of hope that saving 30 books meant victory when the reality authored a more deceptive story. They got their one, setting a precedent for the future we are living today. We must be better than our adversaries if we are to protect the very tenets of public education. If we are to protect the futures of our local and state economies and the young people we hope will fill the jobs of tomorrow, then we must come out from the shadows, acknowledge our failures, and address the issues head on, with conviction and humility for incoming information that may alter our actions, opinions, and our motives. We must be the very thing we purport to want for our children, for the children of Tennessee. Critical thinkers who are not afraid of conflict but embrace differences as opportunities to learn. Creative beings who embrace a growing economy and spotlight for the advantages we should all be able to prosper from. It is time for the adults in the room to raise their hands, be accounted for, and stand up for the brand of decency that promotes new cultural experiences, different perspectives, and respects those unlike ourselves. Anything short of an actively inclusive stance open to learning and shared experience positions us as selfish. A state ready to ingest investments from the Amazons and Oracles of the world, yet reticent to the very citizens these hubs of American innovation invite into our zip codes makes us disingenuous. You see, hypocrisy runs deep beneath the Cumberland, and it is time to wake up the implications of outdated, antiquated legislation and propaganda aimed at decelerating growth while we sit on not just a national stage, but a global platform of economic opportunity. We have only ourselves to blame as parents and citizens. The information has been right in front of us, but we have been too busy scrambling to make something of our lives in pursuit of the American dream, to even notice the access afforded us, to exercise our parental judgment within the libraries that dot our counties. You see, Governor Lee and the legislature already passed the Age Appropriate Materials Act, providing guardrails. Librarians across the state have for years been posting materials for parents to peruse. This is an old argument dusted off to serve a higher calling and purpose: the pocketbooks and political positions of those aiming for a complete restructuring of our educational system, benefiting the few, marginalizing the many. One that pulls public dollars and places them in private hands. One that must create the experience of chaos to instill doubt in the minds of our citizens. One that uses mystery and deflection to prop up the fallacies of a proposed utopian education system underscored by the mechanisms of charter schools and classical curriculum. This argument isn't about libraries or the role librarians play in the grander plan of education. We have fabulous and tenaciously dedicated librarians across this state that have been our vetting partners, ensuring age-appropriate materials were both accessible and supported in the name of student well-being, curiosity, and growth. I stand with the librarians of this state in denouncing this hyperbolic legislation, and I stand with the Tennessee Association of Librarians. I challenge the citizens of Tennessee to use your voice beyond the pages of Facebook, beyond insular protection of text threads, and speak with conviction for the role of education, not the political agendas of a legislature more concerned with their career trajectories than in the duties they swore to uphold. A wise superintendent reminded me that education is meant to help a young person learn how to learn, not what to learn. A factory of robots ensures the status quo. Freethinkers pose the ultimate challenge to the establishment in curiously asking why. Distracting the newly appointed state library coordinator with oversight activities steeped in subjective gymnastics cripples our state and the professionals charged with shepherding our students through the already difficult journey of school. It is time that we wake up, Nashville. It is time that we wake up the local media into giving voice and position to the common sense majority and not the fear-mongering ignorance filling our airwaves. It is time that the Nashville elite wake up. We can celebrate the proliferation of Nashville residents on American Idol, or celebrate the next movie star that calls the mid-state home, or squeal with anticipation that we just might be awarded a Major League Baseball franchise, ironically, and proposed to be owned for the first time by a minority, all the while installing legislation that runs the risk of pushing the glitz of Nashville across state borders. We can either be on the right side of history or nailed to a chair of ignorant petulance for a time gone by. Wake up, Nashville. Wake up, legislature. Wake up, Tennessee.
Just want to thank everyone for coming out and for watching. If you're watching this live, had some really amazing thoughts shared tonight that's reflective of the almost 1 million public school students across the state of Tennessee who can't be here because they're taking state testing and their teachers are administering that test and the librarians are being pulled in to administer tests. And really the resounding message we just want to get through to those teachers and to the librarians is there are so many people on your side, and I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but just know that we're out here. Some of us physically, but so many more watching from the comfort of Facebook and Twitter, trying to figure out what to do. And we're asking you that want to know what to do, please engage. Find out what's happening in your local school district. Email your legislators today. It takes 5 seconds. That's what you can do. That's how you show that you respect your teachers and your librarians. Just go do it, please. Thanks, everyone.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this, and thanks to Williamson Strong and everybody who organized this stream and who went out there on short notice to Nashville, to the Capitol, to be there. I just wanted to hop in here and explain a little bit about back and forth, how we got to this point today, because I see some comments in here about, that this is the supermajority is the will of the people, but how this bill got to the floor this morning should tell you that Speaker Sexton knows damn well that this is not what the people want, because this bill, first of all, it was an amendment attached to a bill that does something completely different. Jerry Sexton presented it in subcommittee yesterday for the first time, and then it went to committee the same day, and now it's on the floor the next day. So within 24 hours, it has gone through subcommittee, committee, and now it's on the floor. Jerry Sexton in subcommittee said that the bill adds 2 members to the textbook commission and made no mention of the fact that it gives this textbook commission power over every school library, meaning that any library book in any school library in Tennessee has to be approved by this textbook commission. So that is state takeover of the content in our school libraries, and it's important to remember something that hasn't been mentioned in any of the articles about this. There's only really been one that I've seen. It wasn't mentioned in this press conference just now, understandably, but I want to mention it. Sexton's most recent appointment to this commission is Laurie Cardoza Moore. Laurie Cardoza Moore is as extremist and radical as they come. She supported violent insurrection. There's video of it, calling for, not so subtly calling for violence when the election when the attack, before the attack happened at the Capitol. So she was absolutely making it clear that she wanted, something violent to happen. She's also a 9/11 truther. It was on her website, and Senator Akbari called her out about this. And then she is also blatantly anti-Muslim and was ripped on the Daily Show, mocked on the Daily Show for being blatantly anti-Muslim, and we posted this video. So to put this person on the textbook commission is it just tells us who Speaker Sexton really is. And then to have this go down the way it's going down is an absolute disgrace. And it shows you that Speaker Sexton doesn't believe that this is what people want, because if it was, this wouldn't have happened this way. This wouldn't be an amendment to a bill that does something else. This wouldn't be, done in secret at the very end of the legislature. It's going to end tomorrow. So on the last 2 days of the legislature, this is what we're seeing happen. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that the process gives away how vile this bill and this takeover really is, and everybody should be up in arms about it. And, even though Cardoza Moore is only going to be one of 10 or 12 people on this commission, she's going to have outsized influence. She's going to try to, bring people in who believe what she believes. And what we're going to see, like everybody said at this press conference, is the diminishment of voices of color, the diminishment of the LGBT community, the diminishment of different perspectives, and the gradual molding of our libraries and our schools and our children to conform to what they want our children to be like and what our children's education should be. So just please be aware of what's happening here. This is all working hand in glove with all of the other censorship and book banning that we've seen. And, again, as Ann just said, reach out to your legislators, let them know you're watching. I am skeptical that this is going to not be blocked because of the way this has happened, but even if you're a Republican and watching this, like I know our buddy Gapper X is on here, I see a couple of other people on here that are not, progressives or whatever you want to call us, but there's no way you guys can defend the process here. The process here is indefensible. Sneaking in an amendment, not even telling the committees what this bill does, and then having it on the floor 24 hours later without anybody having any comment about it. That's indefensible. And I saw someone say, oh, there's only tens of people out there at the protest. Well, we just found out about this yesterday. So, that's not democracy. this is, you know, very concerning. I'd ask you to think about if the people you disagree with were doing things this way, how would you feel about that? And put yourself in that position because, you know, at the end of the day, democracy is really what's under attack here. And this is our kids that we're thinking about. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Please speak up. Have a good day.